the cross, the old rugged cross, till my trophies at last I lay down. I will cling to the cross, the old rugged cross, and exchange it someday for a crown. Oh, that old rugged cross, so despised by the world, as a wondrous attraction for me. For the dear Lamb of God left his glory above to bear it to dark Calvary. So I'll cherish the cross, the old rugged cross, till my trophies at last I lay down. I will cling to the cross, the old rugged cross, and exchange it someday for a crown. To that old rugged cross I will ever be true, its shame and reproach gladly bear. Then he'll call me someday to my home far away, where his glory forever I'll share. So I'll cherish the cross, the old rugged cross, till my trophies at last I lay down. I will cling to the cross, the old rugged cross, and exchange it someday for a crown. On a hill far away stood an old rugged cross, the emblem of suffering and shame. And I love that old cross, where the dearest and best for a world of lost sinners was slain. So I'll cherish the cross, the old rugged cross, till my trophies at last I lay down. I will cling to the cross, the old rugged cross, and exchange it someday for a crown. Oh, that old rugged cross, so despised by the world, as a wondrous attraction for me. For the dear Lamb of God left his glory above to bear it to dark Calvary. So I'll cherish the cross, the old rugged cross, till my trophies at last I lay down. I will cling to the cross, the old rugged cross, much gladly bear. Then he'll call me someday to my home far away, where his glory forever I'll share. So I'll cherish the cross, the old rugged cross, till my trophies at last I lay down. I will cling to the cross, the old rugged cross, and exchange it someday for a crown. On a hill far away stood an old rugged cross, the emblem of suffering and shame. And I love that old cross where the dearest and best for a world of lost sinners was slain. So I'll cherish the cross, the old rugged cross, till my trophies at last I lay down. I will cling to the cross, the old rugged cross, and exchange it someday for a crown.
Right? And that's what Israel thought. Where's Moses? What's happened to him? What's going on? We're in the wilderness. What about food? What about safety? And we got to do something, and we need a God. And remember, the word is a military term. And remember, they're not asking, they're demanding to Aaron, give us a God. Or else is the idea. And Aaron just, wilts under that pressure. He's no Moses, and he fears his life or whatever in his mind, or he thinks, it's not a big deal. Maybe Moses will even get back before we even do it, and we just see how quickly it spiraled out of control. They build the image, and immediately, remember we talked about that figure of speech. They rose up to eat and play, and we filled in the blanks, didn't we? From 1 Corinthians 10, sexual immorality broke out. And again, we talked about how maybe this was even just because we know there's going to be a few thousand that are going to get are going to perish as a result of this. So it wasn't the whole 2 million and a half, whatever the number is of Israel. But it don't take much, and it don't take many to influence large crowds, because I think it was, someone was talking about, it's easy to get swept away, isn't it? And you start out on something and you go, well, everybody else is kind of going this direction and doing it, and you don't think it's going to lead to something real crazy, and how many times it does. And so we've looked at it from Israel's perspective. What about Moses' perspective? And again, Moses' perspective is funny because first time God's going to tell him, he's not even going to see it. God said, them people that you brought out, like a parent telling another parent, that child of yours, did you go see what your kid did? God is like, he's furious. And Moses doesn't see it initially, right? He just takes God's word. He's not privy to it. And then he's going to get down there, and Joshua's with him and says, hey, wait a minute. And he's going to lose it himself. So Moses, let's talk about from Moses' perspective. Let's look at Exodus 32, and somebody read Exodus 32. Again, we're going to come back to God. 11 through 14. Who's got that? Okay, Ron?
But Moses sought the favor of the Lord his God. O Lord, he said, why should you anger burn against your people whom you brought out of Egypt with great power and mighty hand? Why should the Egyptians say it was with evil
14.
Then the Lord relented and did not bring on his people the disaster he had threatened.
Okay, again, we're going to come and we're going to finish out with God. So we're going to come back to some of the verses that start with God there, but preceded what Ron read. Because God's going to say, like I said, kind of in my mind, like a parent to another parent, them people that you brought out of Egypt, you ought to see what they're doing. You know, it's kind of like, Moses is like, what did I do, right? It's not my, but God is going to, his initial response and his righteous anger and wrath towards sin is he's going to want to do what with them? Wants to wipe them out, destroy them, and start over with Moses. I'll build a great nation out of you. We'll just start over with you. So Moses, of course, is going to intercede. And so Moses will do this often, of course. But why does Moses do this? Now, I know we get some indication in the text that he's going to say, but I want you to, again, put your thinking cap on and put yourself in Moses' shoes, all that you've been through, your life up to this point. Why not Moses be like, have at it, God. Let your wrath consume them. Wipe them out. Okay, pity. What else? Put yourself in Moses' shoes here. What's he been through? And we know, how this began. When he was 40, he visited what? His people, and he saw one of them, an Egyptian, being beaten, remember? So he's got pity, he's got compassion. Go ahead, Matt. Right. Yeah. 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 Right. Yeah. Yeah, go ahead, Ron. You had a...
Well, I think he loved his people and he loved God.
Mm-hmm.
And he just felt like that he was saying we need to complete this mission.
Yeah. Yeah. I think real good. Yeah, go ahead over here. Right, yeah. Yeah. Does I see another hand of thoughts on? Yeah, Matt. What? Who let you out? Josh. Right, right. Yeah. Yeah, he takes this, and we'll talk about that at the here just a little bit. He absolutely, Jesus is the embodiment of what Moses will ultimately do, because, Moses is, he's taken responsibility, and yet Jesus is going to completely bear it, and take it upon himself. Other thoughts on put yourself in Moses' shoes? I really like what Roy said. I've been through so much. Who wants to start over, right? You ever been so far where it's like, we're not going back. We're not starting over. We're not, you think he loves these people. Do you think Moses also knows that he's human? I don't know. I'm just speculating. Now, later on, if he doesn't know it now, he's certainly going to know it later on when you get over in the wilderness wandering for 40 years. Remember, he's going to strike the rock instead of speaking the rock. And it's going to cost him from entering into the promised land. But I just wonder, too, if Moses already knows it now. They're humans, right? And he recognizes maybe his own humanity, and that none of us are perfect, right? And now again, right now he's hearing it from God. When he sees it, it's kind of like a calm, cool, collective parent that hears it over the phone. And then they get there and they see the whatever, right? And now they lose it. Now he's going to lose it when he gets down to the foot of the mountain. But right now he's maybe he recognizes the humanity. And of course, ultimately now in the text he's going to say, what's some specifics he's going to say? He talks about this salvation. Look what he says here in, let me get over here. Why should your anger burn against your people, whom you brought out of Egypt with great power and a mighty hand? I mean, you've saved these people. You delivered them. You loved them. You cared for them. And it's not a matter of God being justified. He's justified, and he would be justified in destroying them. But Moses doesn't, he appeals to what God has done in the salvation that you've brought them out. And then he appeals, look what he says in verse 12, why should the what? Yeah, don't give the Egyptians the pleasure of saying, well, this kind of a God is so all over the place. He brings them out and then he destroys them on the whim of whatever. I mean, the accusation that they could make towards God, that it was with an evil purpose that he brought them out and killed them on the face of the earth. We've seen this terminology, unfortunately, in recent years. What do they call it when somebody slaughters their family, right? We've seen that. Headlines, big time news. I know you watched some of it too, just like I did recently over in wherever that was, North Carolina, with that family, where they annihilate families. And you go, how could a mother, we've seen mothers, fathers, slaughter their children, their spouse, and we want evil intent, and what's in their heart, and they could say that about God, right? That you brought them out here to do this the whole time. You had evil intentions, and so he's concerned about. By the way, we're going to see. Well, we're not going to see. We're not going to go past Exodus, but when you continue to study the Bible story here, Rahab is going to be one that what? She has heard what? The story of God. Right. Right. But it's not a story of God who wiped out his people, is it? It's a story of God who what? Saved his people. And so Rahab is exhibit A we could call to the witness stand. Not that we're trying to take a case against God, okay? But you get a little bit of this, don't you, in the Bible with certain Bible characters that kind of go back and forth with God, don't they? In that relational aspect of, God, what about this if you do this? Yeah, Matt?
Did you ever look at it that God was testing Moses?
Sure, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think that, and we might touch on that a little bit in God's response to what Moses is doing. His actions likely is, probably a test of what Moses is in his heart. And absolutely. So God here, don't do this because of your reputation. The honor and the glory that you have, don't do this. Don't damage your reputation. You're going to undo everything you've done. Yeah, go ahead, Jeff. Oh, I'm sorry, Maggie, and then? Okay. Boy, yeah, I'll hear about that later. I don't have anything to say now. You never want to hear your spouse say that to you. I don't have anything to say. Yeah, they got something to say. They're going to say it. Jeff, please save me.
Well, I think that we see a lot of growth in Moses.
Yeah.
In lifetime. And I think his experiences with God have changed him.
Mm.
And, what I thought of when you asked this question was in Numbers 12 when Miriam and Aaron are grumbling against Moses.
Yeah.
He gets all the glory and they're,
Right.
that's their brother. And he says,
he's going to, I mean, and this is, by the way, this is going to be just one of many that Moses is going to intercede, right? One time, remember what he's going to say later on? Lord, if you destroy them, just wipe my name out of the book of life. Remember that? I mean, the good shepherd lays down his life for the what? For the sheep. And Moses is going to also embody that, right? As a shepherd who is shepherding God's people. And as Jeff said, no doubt he's grown over this time. And go ahead, yeah, Roy. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, Moses had to be, frustrated. Again, the funny irony is once he gets down to the mountain, it's a good thing God didn't ask him that, I want to start over with you after he saw it, right? Because Moses might have taken God up on that offer, because he's going to get down there and he's going to get pretty livid. I mean, he's going to grind up the idol and make them drink it. I mean, Moses comes down, but I'm like Roy. He loves his people. It's okay to question God in faith. Didn't Job do that? Right? Didn't Abraham, to a lesser degree, say, Lord, are you going to destroy the righteous with the wicked? Remember that? Yeah, Jeff. Yeah. Yeah, it's good. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, you go back to Moses we think about that, being a shepherd. I mean, he spent 40 years out there from 40 to 80 with his father-in-law, right, Jethro. And, how many times did he have to go after, the goat, the sheep, and sheep are what? Prone to wander. They don't realize there's danger ahead of them. I mean, Moses, there was a 40-year humbling period with Moses that makes him the ideal right leader at this moment, that is going to intervene. And he's also going to say, remember Abraham and Isaac and Jacob. He's going to say, remember your servants Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, whom you swore by your own self, I will make your descendants as numerous as the stars in the sky, and I will give them the descendants all of this land. Now, of course, God could have kept his promise, destroyed the people, started over with Moses. Moses is a descendant of Abraham, right? So, but he calls back the faithfulness of God. Again, when you find yourself in moments of crisis and turmoil and confusion and question, that's when you lean into the faithfulness of God. Most people, they allow those trials and those tribulations and hard times to push them away from God's faithfulness, right? You ever seen that? You ever seen that with somebody, maybe a parent, a spouse, a loved one, a coworker, a good friend? They lean away when they should be leaning into, right? People that care about them and love them. And Moses is going to do that. He's going to lean into, maybe that's the only thing Moses can find, comfort in, and as far as his footing to say, God, how your faithfulness, even though technically God could have wiped him out, started over with him and been just as faithful, right? But nonetheless, he's testing likely what's in Moses' heart as well. But yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry, Amy. Oh yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah, the best leaders, whether it's political, military, in the church, that know that are up on the ground, up close with their people that they're leading. They're not up on the throne, up way above high. They're right down there with the people, right? They know the people. The people respect them and know that they care about them. And of course, again, all this is embodied in Jesus, okay? I will raise up one greater, what like you, Moses. Remember what God's going to say? Who was that? Jesus. He is the ultimate Moses that is a Savior figure. That matter of fact, look over at Hebrews chapter 7. Put your finger here, and Hebrews chapter 7. Let's read a little bit here. Hebrews 7. Man, let's see here. Let's break it up. Somebody get 11 through 14. Who's got that for me? Okay, Matt. And then somebody get 15 through 19. Who's got that for me? 15 through 19. Okay, Kathy. And then somebody get 20 through 25. 20 through 25. Okay, Jeff. All right, let's read this.
Now, if perfection had been attainable through the Levitical priesthood, granted the people had received the law, what further need would there have been for another priest to arise after the order of Melchizedek, rather than one named after the order of Aaron? For when there is change in the priesthood, there is necessarily a change in the law as well. For the one of whom these things are spoken belonged to another tribe, from which no one has ever served at the altar. For it is evident that our Lord was descended from Judah, and in connection with that tribe, Moses said nothing about priests.
And yet it is far more evident in the likeliness of Melchizedek there arises another priest, who has come not according to the law of the fleshly commandment, but according to the power of the endless life. For he testifies, "You are a priest forever, according to the order of Melchizedek." For on the one hand, there is an annulling of the former commandment because of its weakness and unprofitableness. For the law made nothing perfect. On the other hand, there is the bringing in of a better hope, through which we draw near to God.
And it was not without an oath others became priests without any oath, but he became a priest with an oath when God said to him, "The Lord has sworn and will not change his mind. You are a priest forever." Because of this oath, Jesus has become the guarantee of a better covenant. Now there have been many of those priests since death prevented them from continuing in office. But because Jesus lives forever, he has a permanent priesthood. Therefore, he is able to save completely those who come to God through him, because he always lives to intercede for them.
Okay, we know ultimately Moses is a figure of a shadow of the ultimate reality. I will raise up a prophet like Moses. One will be greater than Moses. One, even though Moses is incredible, and you know, if there's a Mount Rushmore on the Bible, right, of Bible figures, Moses is on there. Clearly, he is one of the greatest men of faith who ever lived, and his love for the people and what he's about to endure over the next 40 years is going to be unimaginable. What he's going to have to put up with, but ultimately, it points to the greater Moses, the reality of Christ. And I love what the Hebrew writer talks about. If perfection could have come through the law, we'd have had it. But, you know, the law doesn't save. The law only condemns. The law points out what you've done wrong. And then he talks about, of course, there'd be no need for another. And this, you talked about Melchizedek, and there's a lot of mystery about Melchizedek. We don't really want to talk about, but, you know, he's obviously a Christ-like figure that is pointing to ultimately Jesus. The priesthood's been changed. Talks about Jesus couldn't even have been a priest from for Israel because he didn't come from what? The tribe of Levi. And so there's a new order, a new priesthood. There's a new covenant that God has made. And he talks about the because of the weakness, it was weak and useless. The law could not save. And so Jesus Christ had to come and be the embodiment, the Savior. And he comes and he takes upon our sins. You know, we know that so many people around the world are now going to be thinking about this over the next few days this week with Easter next Sunday. And it's just wonderful that the world would pause and think about, that's right, all of the problems we have, it ties all back to our sin, and there's nothing we can do about it except one person, one man, Jesus Christ. He was able to break the power of sin and death, and by his death and by his resurrection. And now he says, as he concludes here, he talks about this several times in the book of Hebrews. He lives now to, I love verse 25 that Jeff read, he's able to completely save to those who come to God through him, because he always lives to what? Make intercession. Think about that. He always lives. That's his purpose. That's his goal, is to make intercession. Now, what do you think about intercession? What's that mean? What do we think about when we think about that term itself? What do we think about intercession? When someone makes intercession, when someone intercedes, what are we talking about? What? Contact, go between? You usually got what? Moses, but you usually got what? Two parties that are not together. They're not at peace. They're warring. Do what? They're adversaries, right? And yeah, kind of like referee. And they come in and we would use arbitrary. We would come in and try to make arbitrate it and mediate it, kind of get them to come to some agreement. And Jesus Christ is this one that comes and he gives his life. He's the only way that we can have a reconciliation with God, is through his blood that was shed. And it's just incredible. He always lives to make. And then he gets over, look at Hebrews chapter 4 here. Flip over to Hebrews 4. I love this passage. You know this passage as well. Hebrews 4, someone get 4 through 16. Hebrews 4, 4 through 16. Who'd like to read that for us? Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, ask while we're turning over there. You bet. No, go ahead. Exactly. Sure. Priest or. Mm-hmm. That's right. Mm-hmm. That's right. Mm-hmm. Yes. Right. Mm-hmm. Right. And there's only one. Yeah. Jesus. He's the only one. Absolutely. You're absolutely right. We don't need that mediator, go between. We don't need that priest to. You're on the right track biblically. That's exactly right. Now we don't want to diminish or minimize that. We can pray for each other. Right. Absolutely. Yeah. But we don't need to have a representative to go on our behalf, that we have Jesus now. We go straight to him. Now let's read this, Hebrews 4. This ties exactly in what Soshi's saying. Hebrews 4, 4 through 16. Who'd like to read that for me? I'm sorry, Hebrews 4, 14. I'm sorry, Ron. Yeah, 14 through 16. Yeah, I was in 4, and then, okay, Ron, you go ahead and read it. Yeah. 14 through 16.
Therefore, since we have a great high priest who has gone through the heavens, Jesus, the Son of God, let us hold firmly to the faith we profess. For we do not have a high priest who is unable to sympathize with our weaknesses, but we have one who has been tempted in every way, just as we are, yet was without sin. Let us then approach the throne of grace with confidence, so that we may receive mercy and find grace to help us in our time of need.
See, Soshi, everything you were saying right here, it's what the Hebrew writer says, that we have a high priest who understands, who sympathizes with us. He put on flesh. He experienced what we experienced. He lived this life, and so he can understand us, and yet he's God, so he's perfect. He's divine, he's sinless, and so he represents God as God in the flesh, but he also understands us, so he's the perfect mediator. He's the perfect one that when we say nobody understands, no, Jesus says, no, I understand. You've been betrayed? I understand betrayal. Everything, Jesus, and yet when it comes to God, I mean, again, is God's wrath justified here in Exodus 32? And God would be justified if he condemned us and left us to die. He would still be God. But the love of God seems to be deeper than the wrath of God, because his love for us, that he wants to save. And so Jesus Christ is the ultimate Moses. He's the perfect mediator and makes intercession for us. And I love what it says as we close. We approach God's throne of grace with what? Boldness, confidence, right? Like a child, that you want a loving relationship with a parent and a child. The child can know they can go to their parent anytime and ask anything when they're in need of help. That I know my mom, I know my dad will be there. And we have that boldness, we have that confidence when it comes to our sin and our relationship with God, that all we have to do is go to God. All we have to do is go to the one who makes intercession for us, and we have confidence that we get mercy and grace to help in our time. Here's what I want you to think about. This past week and this week, Jesus is interceding for you. You're asking Jesus to intercede for you. And I don't care what it is, or big or small, all of us are going to need that intercession. We're going to need that representation, if you will, that will plead our case. And the Bible will also speak about Jesus, as we close, as an advocate. That'll be the term, kind of what we would think a lawyer, one who pleads the case, makes an argument for another. And Jesus is our advocate, 1 John 2, 1 and 2. And so Moses, what he's doing, whether he knows it or not, is ultimately going to be the embodiment of what Jesus will do. And again, he is a Moses-like figure, that God would raise up a prophet like Moses. And we know, of course, that's what happened in outside of Jerusalem 2,000, roughly 2,000 years ago, right? Where Jesus did exactly that and gave his life for us. And so it's a great example. We're going to come back to next week, though, finish up just Moses briefly as far as Moses and God, because all this intercession and don't destroy them and save them, God, does not wipe out the consequences, okay? And we'll see that next week as we see what happens as a result of this. All right, we'll pick up there.